Welcome back. Today we're talking with Brendan Monahan, the author of Strategic Corporate Crisis Management. Brendan, great first segment. Lots of good information there about talking about the plan and keeping it going, and testing and exercising, and a bunch of other topics. Now let's jump to something about the team. How do you go about building a good team? Who needs to be involved? What roles should they play? Should it be hierarchy-based? What are your thoughts on the team?
Yeah, so I look at the team as having sort of like concentric circles, right? There's a core team. There's a slightly broader team around them, and then maybe an even broader group of experts on the outside of that. And some of that may be defined for us by regulators or by a system that we may have adopted. Maybe it's ICS, or maybe it's an ISO format, or whatever the case may be. It could be your internal policy defines who must be on the team. But ideally, Alex, I think the team should consist of a core few people who are sort of the shepherds of the process, right? Experts in the organization's crisis management policy, for want of a better term, right? How to get that policy, how to meet with the internal requirements of the organization in terms of whatever that is, and then how to bring the right people to bear. So you need to have that core group. And then around them, when an incident occurs, you would want to have, a sort of regular group of people that are familiar, trained, exposed to incidents in the past, that may serve in roles on the team. Some sort of a leader, some sort of an operations person, someone with a logistics background, so on. And then beyond that, I think of the team as really kind of consisting of a roster of subject matter experts that have some exposure to the crisis management process. They get brought in depending on what's happening.
Yeah.
Data privacy, or legal expert, or a health and safety expert, or you name it, right? So that's how I look at the team sort of ideally being constructed.
Again, because I asked this in the first one, how do you determine exactly who's in that core team? Because you end up with, let's say, 3 vice presidents. I'll just say that for argument's sake. And you just know that fourth one is a little upset. Why aren't I a part of this?
Mm.
And sometimes it ends up undermining what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah. So in the last section, we talked a lot about plans and how plans well executed may not always meet with the reality of the circumstances, but can help provide guardrails to drive a good discussion.
Mm.
Here's an area where I think policy may matter, right? If you have the ability to do it in your organization, to create a crisis management policy or a business continuity resilience, whatever it is, have a policy that defines to a certain extent who should be the key decision maker, the ultimate decision maker on that team, or who should be the shepherd of that process initially, to avoid the collision of interests that you just described, which can occur. So if you can do that, then that's not a decision you have to make when the moment comes. It's clear, right? It's, Alex is going to take the lead. He's going to consult with the president, and then we'll build out the team in concentric circles from there, define objectives, and proceed. Ideally, that's how I would look at it.
So what are some of the key characteristics of a good crisis management team? What kind of things should they know, or how should they behave, or
So what kind of things should they know? I would answer that by starting with outputs, right? What is it? What is their value proposition, right? It's to deliver good decisions in tough times, right? So to do that, the team has to have access to a map of the organization's universe, right? The fully deployed team should be a microcosm of the organization's universe, or the pieces of it that matter at this point. Right. So during blue sky times where nothing's happening, the sort of keepers of the policy, the keepers of the crisis management program, should be sort of developing sources around the organization, establishing contacts and relationships, and looking for ways in which to get things done now in the present, because the incident will come in the present, and however we used to do it won't matter anymore. It'll now matter today. So that's how I look at standing teams in peacetime. I think in response, then the crisis organization should take the shape of its container, right? whatever that is. The direction or the guidance or the guardrails in place and the plans may have been obstructed by the incident. So now we're going to have to respond differently.
Yeah, I remember being told a long time ago, saying that any disaster or crisis will dictate what it is you need to do.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you could think you're going in the right direction, and then that situation throws you a curveball, and suddenly you're going in a different direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reality is that sometimes action needs to be taken if it's really bad. Some action needs to be taken in order to prompt a result which defines what the next right thing is, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're in the fog, you don't know if there's a wall in front of you unless you take a step or you reach out and touch it. Sometimes you need to probe through a little bit and have some boldness and have some leadership that's willing to support that kinds of thing. I experienced that a lot in the COVID response, where it wasn't clear what the right thing was to do. It wasn't clear what the credible guidance meant. So we needed to take deliberate, slow, steady action towards what we thought was right for us. And little by little, we found the way with some missteps along the way, but you're not taking a running leap at the wall you can't see. You're slowly approaching it.
How do you keep a team going, though? Because in crisis management, knock on wood, that hopefully a year goes by and nothing has happened and nothing has had to have been activated. These team members haven't gotten together to discuss, something that needs to go into social media or, a spokesperson, because of a situation being faced. How do you keep the team going?
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's been my experience a few times where it's like a team has been responding together so long for something that they're tired of meeting all the time. They're tired of the response. So you start to stand it down and they're like, we don't want to stop. No, we now what do we do? I think how do you keep everyone engaged? There has to be a venue for continued interaction, right? And there's another sort of hidden value in a planning process. Is that it's an occasion, it's a cause for people to come together around the planning process, which is a deliverable, right? You can't make things happen in organizations without a reason. So the planning process provides an organization with the capability to do some things around planning, but also to bring people together, right? To keep that sort of energy and momentum, at a pace or at a cadence it's not imposing on the business. You don't want to stand in the way of progress, but that still provides the support that people need, whether it's quarterly or biannually or monthly, whatever the right amount is. And then I think when things are happening, Alex, and this is part of your earlier question, is how do you keep the team moving? The best sort of crisis leaders that I've worked around just had incredible kindness, patience, intangible qualities of leadership that made it possible for people to do their best work in tough times. So I have learned a lot by working around people like that bring kindness and positivity to difficult discussions with honesty, candor, but without adding any additional sort of interpersonal stress. It's hard to do, especially when people are experiencing something difficult. So that's one of the things that I admire most about some of the crisis practitioners I've worked with.
Yeah, that's got to be tough because the demand for information goes up. The time you have to respond to situations, whether it be a question or rebuilding a mainframe, whatever it could be, goes down. And the last thing anybody needs is a leader who's flipping out, shall we say,
Yeah.
losing control, and putting additional stress on people who are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. And maybe some of that is a fact of life in some organizations, but in that core of the concentric circles, right, you can have people that have a talent for insulating others from some of that maybe negativity, and being able to not take themselves that seriously, maybe even bring a sense of humor to bear.
Mhm.
That's, I think that really matters. And you can bring that to the planning process as well, and sort of make the experience good for people along the way.
How about, because you mentioned an interesting example here. You said, based on the situation, Alex will be the person who's going to talk to the president. What if I'm not available? What if I won the
Yes.
lottery and I'm on a beach in Rio? You know,
Right. Yeah. I mean, you gotta have some bench strength on that core team. It's gotta be at least a backup to Alex, if not two. And in my view, I try to keep that bench strength throughout the concentric circles, so that there's, if you look at it, it seems like a cast of thousands, and you don't want that, but you do want to have. You're probably not going to not have Alex on the crisis team, right? He'll probably show up, but there definitely is going to be some expert that you really need who's not going to be there. It's going to be a legal expert or a health and safety expert. So it's good to have one or two of those, or at least bring in the business owner from that area who can find whoever it is now that you're going to need. So it's a lot of stakeholder management in my mind. But on that core team, you got to have Alex and Alex's deputy.
yeah. I don't hear a lot about cross training much these days.
Mhm.
That before Y2K, because that's how long I've been around, there was lots of talk about cross training this, cross training that. And
Mhm.
now that never seems to crop up,
Hmm.
but it's important.
It is important. Yeah, it is. It is important. I don't know why that is. Maybe people are so specialized now that it's less
Mm,
practical than it used
true.
to be. I'm speculating, but yeah. I mean, cross training is that's a challenge in a complex organization. In utility world and the critical infrastructure world, a lot of the responses that I was involved in had to do with resource management, right? There's a storm and massive power outage over a huge area. And so companies have mutual aid agreements to bring in teams from other states. So there's a lot of excellent planning that can be done definitively around how to achieve that, right? So that's a smooth process. And you can cross train people within those specialties so that,
Mm.
office workers like me could do some basic sort of lookup and safety work out in the field to help those teams deploy efficiently. That's an area where it could be useful. But in some industries, like the one I'm in now, the work is so specialized, so unique to the organization itself. It's hard to bring in mutual aid, let alone cross train under one's own roof somehow.
Yeah.
So the challenge is at that point, it's not a resource management issue. It's more of a problem solving under constrained conditions sort of thing.
Any final words on teams?
I will say this. So my dark horse on any crisis management team, the absolute winner, and I don't know hear a lot of people talk about it, is a procurement expert. Having a procurement expert who knows how to buy stuff, who knows how to get things um, that you've never bought before from partners you've never worked with before, that's a huge win. I've had that happen many, many times, and I would strongly recommend crisis management teams make sure they have a procurement expert sitting right next to them.
Yeah, especially with the big supply chain issues that we're experiencing
Yeah,
now. That procurement person has their fingers in all the contracts and the SLAs, and who the contact people are, and not just locally, but it could be internationally. Yeah, they're
absolutely.
they're a key person.
Yep.
On that note, we've come to the end of our second segment. Today, we are talking with Brendan Monahan, the author of Strategic Corporate Crisis Management, and we will be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.